C.C. Grossbaum, Director of the Friendship Circle of Bergen County, and Adina Penner, community resident and proud mother of a superstar son, young man with autism named Montes. We are really thrilled that you're joining us this evening and can't wait to be enlightened by your experiences, perspectives, and recommendations about inclusion and embracing the differently able. And thank you, Rabbi Pardo, for generously agreeing to moderate tonight's panel. My husband Larry and I would also like to extend our most heartfelt gratitude to our amazing committee, Rabbi and Chevy Uten, Rabbi and Sarah Markowitz, Rabbi David Pardo, Rena Schatz, Rizzy Harris, Irene and Robert Gottesman, Amy Brogman, and Marilyn Barth. We have no words to let you know how much we appreciate your dedication, hard work, and creativity. Our beloved Ilona lived an extraordinary life. She was diagnosed at age 11 months old with spinal muscular atrophy type 1. And we were told at the time of her diagnosis that she had a 5% chance of living until age 2. Ilona defied all expectations and lived a joyful, meaningful, and vibrant life until the age of 28. Ilona passed on July 4th, 2021. In hearing a physical description of Ilona, one's first thought might be those of pity or sadness, thinking that this poor girl's life was so limited. Yet Ilona needed a wheelchair, a trach to help her breathe, and a feeding tube due to her almost non-functioning muscles. But what we learned from raising our incredibly determined and joyful daughter is never judge somebody by their appearances or preconceived notions or biases. Many people looked at Ilona and questioned her intelligence because she couldn't speak in a typical way or just because she used a wheelchair. There were many who saw Ilona for who she was, an intelligent and highly capable person, but there were many we had to enlighten. Ilona had only limited movement in one hand, and with that movement, she was able to use a switch to operate a computer, which served as her voice, and also drive a power chair that allowed her to perform in a dance company. Ilona went to college with that one hand, was able to write emails, college papers, and post Facebooks. Ilona was a force. She inspired anyone who had the privilege of knowing her and taught so many how to live a joyful, meaningful, and productive life, no matter what their challenges. Ilona's physical limitations did not define her or limit her talents and accomplishments. She soared despite her challenges. Shortly after Ilona passed, Larry and I knew we had to find a way to honor her memory and legacy and perpetuate the messages she embodied. Ilona taught us to look at ability rather than disability and to focus on a person's strength and not their limitations. We learned invaluable lessons from our beloved Ilona and felt we had a mission to convey these pillars of compassion and humanitarian treatment of all to a broader community. This was the birth of this educational series. We couldn't have found a more esteemed panel of experts with a broad range of experiences and expertise to help elucidate the topic of embracing all differences. We are thrilled to proceed with the evening and hope you will leave with some new perspectives on not just including but embracing the differently able. Thank you so much, and now we'll start.
Thank you, Nancy. Real honor that you asked me to do this. Some of us are here because we met you, loved Ilona. Some of us are here because we are really motivated by the topic. I think most of us in the room are here for both reasons. Before I turn it over to the panelists, I just want to establish the ground rules. This is a panel. Hopefully, it's a conversation. We want you to be a part of it. You're not an audience. You're a whatever other Markowitz just announced to me. To that end, we have flashcards. If you have questions, please, something for statements, even write them down. There's cards all around the room, or there's some in front of Larry. There's pens also. If you're online and you're watching this online, please drop a comment in the comment section, and hopefully we'll pass that question along to the right person or to all three. I'd like to turn it over to the panelists, and if you could just tell us who you are, how you got here, and what you would like us to know about what you do.
Hi, everybody. My name is E.C. Gertzbaum. My husband and I run the Friendship Circle in Bergen County, and I'd like to say that the Friendship Circle is a social organization for kids who have special needs. That we really try to fill the void of social programs for all these children and their families. We first moved to Bergen County in early 2002, which is crazy that it's 20 years ago. And we moved to Paramus. We are the Chabad in Paramus, but our main focus was on a children's organization. My husband launched the Living Legacy programs that he does throughout the county, which would be like the Chauffeur Factory, the Matzah Bakery. It travels to all the schools and day schools and Hebrew schools, and Bergen County is a very Jewish area, so that's pretty full-time. And then after about a year and a half, we were approached by his brother, who lives in Livingston in the Metro West area, to please start a branch of Friendship Circle. They had recently started, and almost immediately, they had received requests from families who lived up in Bergen County. But because of the nature of the program, you really need to be local. It's too much to ask families here to travel, sometimes multiple times in 1 week, to Livingston to have programs for their children. So without any advertising, zero, we started the program. We literally had 4 names on a list of families that had reached out to Livingston that I called. And we had 4 volunteers. 2 kids in Paramus who I knew who babysat for me, who I recruited at my dining room table. And 2 girls who one had been waiting to volunteer in Livingston, and the summer before 7th grade, her family moved to Teaneck, and she was devastated. And then she heard that we're starting. She called me before we even started. She's like, I'm moving, I'm a 7th grader, I'm gonna get all my friends involved. And that's how we started. And then by word of mouth, and really from the ground up, we started with the Friends at Home program, where volunteers visit children in the home, and just grew from there based on requests from parents. And we've now added an educational piece because we run a Hebrew school on Sundays for children with special needs. We have over 40 children every Sunday who join Hebrew school for, Hebrew education, but also like Jewish immersion. And they're in this amazing environment with other Jewish kids and learning about their holidays and traditions. And for the first time, some of them are going home with something for Purim. And it just feels so great for the families. So that's really our focus. That's how we met the Brahmins. Ilona was involved in Friendship Circle for many years. I remember bringing groups of girls to meet her so that they can come visit on Shabbos. And what I did want to say about Nancy and Larry, which is so incredible, actually in the first video that we made for Friendship Circle that we showed, we were talking about, I think I was being interviewed, and I said that the parents who have children with special needs are some of the most incredible people that I've ever met. And I have a clear image of, while I'm saying that, the picture showing is Larry bringing Ilona to some of the programs. So it's really an honor and a privilege to be here, and I look forward to learning new things from the other panelists and sharing what we've already learned.
Thank you so much.
Okay, my name is Adina Penner, and I'm here as the
Listen to the mic. No, closer.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, again, do you hear me now? Yeah. Okay, here we go. My name is Adina Penner. I am here, I guess mostly with my mommy hat on. I am the mother of a 26-year-old young man with autism. I'm a mother of 5 children. He is the fourth in our lineup of children. And again, I'm here as the mom to kind of bring to you hopefully a little bit of the parent perspective on this very important topic of inclusion and integration of individuals with special needs. So Matis is 26 years old. He has autism. He was diagnosed when he was 3 years old officially, but already by the time he was a little before he was 2, we already knew that something was going on. So we've been in this world of special needs for many, many years, obviously. But actually, becoming a mother of a child with special needs was not my first taste of this world. My background in dealing with individuals with special needs started way before that. When I was 18 years old, I started as a counselor in Camp Pass. I worked there as a counselor for 3 summers. Then I was a division head there for a summer. And after that, I was working on my master's degree in occupational therapy, and I wound up working with children with multiple handicaps and children with learning disabilities and emotional issues for about 15, 16 years. In the time that I was working as a therapist, I was lucky enough to work in Camp Pass for 4 summers. And I was there with my entire family. I'd say those are probably the best summers of our lives. You could ask any of my kids. They still miss it. It was an amazing experience for all of us being there together. And at a certain point, I left the field of occupational therapy to focus more on my family and our shul. My husband and I are both Rabbi Rebbetzin, and we were in the pulpit for almost 22 years in total. We started out at Lincoln Square Synagogue as an assistant Rabbi Rebbetzin, and then we moved into the acting Rabbi Rebbetzin role at Lincoln Square, and then we found ourselves in a very special community in Hollis, Queens, where we served for almost 20 years. So I'm very pleased to be here tonight, and I hope that I'll be able to offer some perspective as a parent of an individual with special needs.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jude Michelle. I think I have the least credentials here on the table to speak about this topic. I'm here. No, I'm here because of the privilege I have to serve an institution called Camp Pass, where I've been for 17 summers, and now the past 10 years, primarily full-time professionally. I live in Eretz Yisrael. My family was in Ramat Shemesh. But before that, I used to hang around here. There was a time when I was a student at Yeshiva University that I was the interim associate assistant to Pnina Nussbaum in the youth department over here. When Rabbi Andy Yuden decided to go back to Yeshiva and grabbed somebody to fill in for him. So I'm very, very thankful to be back in Fairlawn and to be able to be part of this program. I feel like my vantage point on this important topic is very much a process. I'm very much learning and continuing to learn. My entry into the field of the world of special needs and individuals with special needs came from what's called the mainstream education of individuals with typical development. I was a teacher at Frisch here in Bergen County, and I was already in Yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael, in Israel, in Rishit, and became part of the Camp Pass community in this incredible professional ecosystem, the vantage point of being a camp rabbi. When I got the job as the camp rabbi, when they offered it to me, we were talking about it, I said, I want to just be upfront. I want to be open. That I don't know anything about this. At that point, I'd gone on a Yachad Shabbaton once. I know somebody didn't work out, but Yachad Shabbaton wasn't working at an angle on Yachad Shabbaton. And that was it. That was it. When I grew up in Monsey, I didn't know anyone. I had never met, never met anyone who would fall the formal category of person with special needs. It just wasn't. And then woke up one day, and I'm a camp rabbi in Pass, and I was like, literally the first day, after the first day of camp, I came back, and I'm like, this is a big mistake. She's like, no, this is my dream come true. She worked in Pass for 4 summers. She's like, I davened for this. All I want in life is to come back to Pass. I'm like, I'm out of here. I can't. I don't know anything. I don't know what to do. I don't know how. And that learning curve has been the greatest privilege of my entire life. It's been the most rewarding professional experience, and have drank the Kool-Aid and fallen in love with the families, with our campers, with the staff, with the community, with this entire notion of fixing the world and making the world a level playing field the way our country, the way Hashem designed it. for every single person to have a place, every person to know that they belong, and to help empower and help individuals find their place in the world and find a meaningful way to be in the world. So to be able to be here, be part of this program, honoring Ilona's legacy with her family and this community, just such an inclusive and open and warm, loving place, it always has been, is really tremendous to express that everything.
Thank you. You're gonna, Roger, I think you're gonna love this one. Want to ask the panelists, are there major misconceptions about differently able people that you would like to address right out at the outset? Just fight for it.
I think I'm going to echo a little bit of what, what Nancy said, but I think a major misconception when it comes to individuals with special needs is that we know anything about them because we happen to know their diagnosis or their label. I think nothing could be farther from the truth, as we heard in your beautiful introductory words, Nancy. That's why in this day and age that we live in, we don't hold people by their labels, right? We're not living in that time where you look at a child with Down syndrome and say, he's a Downs kid, or look at somebody who has autism and say, he's autistic. They're not. They're individuals with Down syndrome, they're individuals with autism, individuals with cerebral palsy, whatever their diagnosis is. But first and foremost, they are individuals. And it's so important to understand that. They all have personalities. I think if you don't know, some people assume that a child with a disability is like this, like a flatliner, like they just don't have that much personality. They all have unique personalities. They all have their own strengths and weaknesses. They all have their likes and dislikes. And if you're only looking at them, you think you know anything, but the fact that you know how they're labeled, you know nothing, you know so little. So that's just a really, really major misconception, I think, to clear up from the onset as we start, especially with coming into this conversation of integration and inclusion. And if you don't get to know a person and know what their strengths and weaknesses are and their likes and dislikes, then you can't include them or integrate them in a meaningful way. It means different things for different kids, for different adults, for any, inclusion, integration means different things for different people. And unless you really take the time to get to know them, then you will have no idea how to do this in an effective way. So I think that that's just something major to clear up before we even start having this very important discussion.
They say that if you know a child with autism, you know a child with autism. That each one is really an individual, so I'm echoing what you said. So my thought when I saw this question was that so much of what defines our lives, the way we look at ourselves and the way we look at all other people is based on what we see with our physical body. So when we look at a person and we can see that their behavior is different, or we can see that they have a physical disability or something that's different, immediately our mind says, oh, they're different, we're not the same. But if we flip things, and we look at things that the soul comes first, all of a sudden we're all the same. So this is like a primary teaching in Chabad in general. The first book by the Baal Tanya, Rabbi Shneur Zalman, is called the Tanya, and one of the major chapters, chapter 32, which is labeled, we say that it's the heart of Tanya. And the whole concept in there is that we're commanded to love each Jew. And how is that really possible? Even think about the people you love, the people in your immediate family, your good friends, your neighbors, those that you love. Do we really love them? What happens when all of a sudden we disagree? What happens when all of a sudden we see things really differently? What happens when all of a sudden they're really annoying, right? Like, do we really love them? And so, but when we look at it from the spiritual perspective, and we can acknowledge that each one of us has a soul, and the soul is literally a piece of God. And the DNA of all our souls is the same. They all come from the same source. So when we're able to look at it that way, all of a sudden, so yes, the physical is different, but let's look at things through soul-colored glasses and try to find the things that unite us, which are actually more than the things that divide us. And once you feel that way, and once you have that passion in your soul where, you know what, this is a fellow Jew, this person has a soul, this is a neshama, then all of a sudden we find ways I think that it just is a transformational shift in the way we look at things. And then that really just naturally changes into the way we act and the way we treat people and the way we think about people and our comfort level around different kinds of people. So that was just.
I was going to say something about Tanya also. But instead of I'll say to the Muppet State Manhattan, is that peoples is peoples. That everyone is different able. Meaning there's no such thing as someone who's not different able. There are some people with different abilities who qualify for government funding and reimbursements and maybe get a better parking spot by Walmart. But every single person has special needs. There's not one of us who doesn't have special needs, individualized needs. They call it an individual with specialized needs. I'm like, oh, I don't know. I have special. I mean, we all have specialized needs. Some maybe they're physical disability. Some perhaps an intellectual disability. There's something. There's a developmental challenge. Some there's a physical challenge. Others have emotional, or psychological, or spiritual challenges. Every person is different able. If we just take a step back and expand inclusion beyond a specific demographic of individuals who are on a specific IQ, or by certain measurements qualify for a certain label, like Rebbetzin said, we're much more than our labels. And Lubavitcher Rebbe told us already that labels are for sure, it's not people. I put a label on a shirt, it's not, we're a person. The person is expansive, the person is drawn from the infinite God, created in God's image. It's probably the most significant contribution that the Jewish people have made to human history, is the notion that mankind, that every human being is created in the divine image. Created in the divine image, that means that every single individual, every human being is a little bit of the infinite, expresses the infinite. And that's not definable. It's not possible to put a label on it. It's not possible to put someone in a box. It's not possible using our soul-colored lenses. We're all people of different abilities, and we all have special needs. We're able to kind of see ourselves and others in the same light, and it's a very good stuff.
I feel like I need to go get glasses, so I can, I write soul-colored glasses on the side, so it reminds me. Always felt bad as a Jew not having glasses. So, piggybacking off of that comment, why do you think it is that some people have a difficult time around people who are differently abled and may feel uncomfortable? And do you have like advice for how to overcome that? We'll start backwards if you do that.
It's the same algorithm. I mean, imagine it's the same algorithm that we have when we're uncomfortable around anything. We want someone with a specific intellectual or physical disability. We're with somebody who we don't necessarily understand or relate to or agree with. We tend to take a defensive stance, or we tend to be suspicious of them. We tend to put up a little bit of a wall because maybe it's coming from a good place. We don't want to insult. We don't want to make trouble. We don't want to make the person feel uncomfortable. And consider in any situation where we don't know exactly what to do or how to engage. Whether it's in a shiva house, or it's in a new professional environment, meeting people, or it's somebody you're sitting with, even a family member who you know voted for the other guy, or has a very different level of religious observance. And you don't want to trigger them, or step on their toes, or be threatening, or make them feel uncomfortable. I keep coming back. If we just look at peoples as peoples, relate to human being as human being, as a person, then we can be a little bit more natural. And it's okay to not know exactly how to engage. It's also okay to be uncomfortable sometimes engaging with someone who is different, whether sees the world differently or somebody who's experiencing the world differently. It's okay to be a little bit open and vulnerable and and open to the process of getting to learn how to, if they're able to, even to ask them what they, if they're comfortable, if this is something which works for them. And a little bit to like be open to the possibility of feeling uncomfortable. I think it's also normalize not knowing exactly how to do and what to do is also okay. I think it's also.
Laugh.
No, next.
Yeah.
So, in terms of like being uncomfortable, Judy, you shared that you grew up in Muncie and you didn't know one person with special needs. So I grew up in Brooklyn and I also did not know one person with special needs. And I often tell the story to the volunteers at our celebration at the end of the year. We have hundreds of kids who volunteer for us, and I just want them to know how incredible what they're doing is. I tell them that when I was a little girl, I think I was 7, there was a country Essie concert at Brooklyn College with Kiwi and Tuki. And as a huge privilege, my mother took me and my older brother. And we got our seats, and this was such a treat. It was a night out on the town. And no sooner did the curtains go up and the lights were off, when all of a sudden an entire group of adults, I think most of them had Down syndrome, came and they were sitting right in front of us. They had all the other rows that were still empty in the balcony were filled with this group. And I was terrified. I literally remember the sheer terror. I think I was physically shaking. And I could not come to myself. I could not watch the concert. We found someone we knew, and we left my brother with him, and my mother took me home because I was literally beside myself. I was a little girl, and this was my first experience. And I told the volunteers, I said, look at all of you, teenagers in today's day, who are so comfortable around kids who are not necessarily the same, kids who have all different things that challenge them or different ways in which they behave. And you guys are superstars. And I think that the real answer to becoming more comfortable is it's just exposure. And I think if we think about it, I don't think that today there's someone who exists in this room or anywhere in society that can say that I don't know a person with special needs. Everybody knows someone. And I think that just, the more you see it and the more you, even if you're uncomfortable, and that will change the way you feel, and for sure for your children. If you have little kids, the more they see it, the more they're exposed, the more it's talked about, the more it's normalized, the more normal it will be for them.
I don't know if I have, so much more to add to that. I think, piggybacking a little bit on what Judah said also, but I think it's really the fear of the unknown. People are uncomfortable just because they don't know what to expect. They might like to approach somebody and they really have this fear of what's it going to be like if I do? Am I going to get a response? Am I not going to get a response? Are they going to be happy and glad that I came over to talk to them? Are they going to get angry? They don't necessarily know how to relate and what to do. And so it's a discomfort and, they just, whatever, they're just afraid. I think it really is fear of the unknown. And again, I'm glad that I'm not going to focus with. But when I got to Camp Pass when I was 18 years old, I think I had been exposed to one individual until that point in my life that had disabilities, but certainly nothing like, what I saw when I walked into Camp Pass. And I also remember getting there and being so overwhelmed. I could not, I don't know what I was thinking before I went to camp. I signed up to be a counselor. I still remember that overwhelmed feeling, looking around, all of a sudden, oh my gosh, there are so many children here with disabilities, and they're all part of our community. Where do they all come from? And what? And I also I had finished schools, and I really didn't know how to relate and what I was going to do. And I remember literally talking in my head, talking myself off the ledge, because I also felt like I think maybe I need to get out of here. What am I doing? I just convincing myself, God, I'm going to do chesed, I'm going to do good things, and it's going to be fine, and whatever. And to echo what they both said, also the only way to get over your fear is to just get to know people, spend time with them, they're people, get to know them. And there's no better way to do that than in Camp Pass. You're a counselor, because basically in 2 seconds you become their parents, you're on them 24/7, you're eating with them, you're sleeping in a bunk with them at night. If they're up in the middle of the night, you're up in the middle of the night. If they're bouncing off the walls at 5 a.m., you're bouncing off the walls with them at 5 a.m. So you really, really get to know them. And that's really just, that's the only way to get over the fear, is just to jump in there and expose yourself and It's okay to make yourself vulnerable. You're not going to know initially, but as you get to know people, you learn how to relate to them. And yeah, I think that's it.
I want to piggyback off of that for a second, but first I want to remind everyone, there's not going to be a questions and answer section at the end of the program. This is the questions and answer section. So if you have a burning one, write it down and we'll slip it in, same with comments. You have a burning one? Okay, but then,
Just raise your hand, I can go get it.
oh, you don't even have to get out of your chair. This is a full service, thing.
One last thing, if we can speak into the microphone, if you guys can bring the microphone maybe a little closer. So that
Or
we can-
scooch up, pretend you're a rock star. You gotta like speak into the thing. Don't worry, these are new, so don't have to worry about messing them up. Representative, I think I'll speak for myself, and I think a lot of people in the room feel the same way. Sometimes you see someone who's blind, and you're not sure if like the right thing to do is to offer to help them, navigate to where they're going, or no, because that's patronizing. I've certainly had experiences, kind of like, I don't know, this paralysis. You're not sure what the right thing to do is. Can you
Ask them.
ask them?
Ask them. Would you like help? I'm really not very comfortable with this. I really just, the best way to approach somebody and not to be patronizing is just to, try to approach them as normally as possible. There's no harm, I don't think, in ever asking somebody if they need a hand, and if they don't, they'll tell you, no, I'm really fine, but thanks for asking. They'll probably appreciate that you thought to ask, I think, but I don't think there's any harm in asking. I don't think that that's patronizing to ask someone. I don't think so.
Do you have examples of, let's say, like language that people use that people should use, people definitely shouldn't use, or like even in this conversation we're talking about special needs and disabilities and differently abled. Do you have sort of a feeling about feeling or examples of kinds of language that people could use?
In terms of how to refer to people?
No, even when speaking to people. I mean, yeah, my example and my question didn't line out. You're pointing out.
I don't really have anything specific on that. I don't.
I was at a meeting today, literally, with 4 parents of children with special needs, individuals with specialized needs. And I kept using it takes me 6-8 words to describe them. And none of the parents who were at the table were using the appropriate person first. Meaning they weren't using the official terminology. They were out of compliance. They didn't sit through the campus orientation. They weren't friendship circle compliant with a respectful person first. They were parents who love their children, who were deeply committed to their children, deeply respectful of their children. And it was just like them, we don't have a special needs kid, like that. I'm like, no, that's not the way we speak. I'm sorry. Just the whole podcast was recently. It's not. I'm saying, I don't know. The language.
Others are sometimes more sensitive about it than we are ourselves. We understand that people don't always know the appropriate language to use, and I certainly don't get hysterical about things like that. But I do, as I said in the introduction, I don't think it's so kind to refer to somebody by their diagnosis. I don't like whatever. When I read things like that, it really irks me. So I guess that's my biggie. But other than that, no.
Okay. What are, in terms of Jewish organizations, in terms of the community, what are some things that you've noticed over the years that some organizations are doing really, really well? And where are some areas where you'd like to see improvement? Anyone can go first.
What are we talking about?
Jewish organizations.
Schools, like what?
Well, I think it's cool that you're all three of you coming from different perspectives, so I want to say all the above.
So you're saying what could be done? What could be done better?
What have you noticed that is being done well, and what could be done better? Schools, organizations, and other communal infrastructure.
So I can't speak for the whole Jewish community, but I could say that here in Bergen County, and I do believe the credit goes to Congregation B'nai Yisrael, I think they were the first one to have a Shul Shadow program, which is just so well done and continues to be incredibly well done. They have not slacked. They've been doing this for probably more than a dozen years, and they are continually, and I do believe that a lot of schools in Bergen County have since followed, which I think is so admirable and so amazing and so necessary. These are our children. They belong in shul, and their parents belong in shul, and everybody should feel like they have a place in shul. And it seems like Shomer Torah is doing it, so kudos to you guys on some level. If there is a child that needs modifications in groups, it should be done. No parent should feel like I need to sit home on Shabbos because my child is not welcome in shul. Because if they start to melt down, or they start to cry, or they need a quiet space, it doesn't exist. It's just so, doesn't jive with everything else we do as a Jewish community. So, and kudos to the shuls that are doing it, and the others, we're happy to connect you to people that could get it started. I think it's like, to me, it's Olive's days of running a shul. Every child is welcome, every family is welcome, and we do whatever it takes to make it work. Just like we're gonna put a ramp outside every new building that goes up, not just because it's code, because we need to make sure that everybody's included. And guess what? When they put up those ramps for people in wheelchairs, it's super helpful for all those mothers with strollers too. So, you know, when we try to do things to accommodate, it ends up accommodating a lot more people than we think. And often we get calls from families that are going somewhere for a Shabbos as guests, and maybe it's not a kid that's always in your community, but for example, if someone's coming and that they feel like even they, as a guest, can come to shul, and somebody is going to care to make it work for them, to make that Shabbos not be a nightmare. I think that's huge. I think we're really on the way, and I think it's little things. And in terms of like general community events, every time I hear something, I'm like, I don't understand. It's really not rocket science. We need to put together a committee of 3 or 4 moms who have kids with special needs, and before an event, just ask them, what is it going to take to make this more appropriate, more inclusive, more accessible? And for the most part, we're not talking about money at all. For the most part, it's really little accommodations that can be done. But overall, I do think that the community has come a long way, continues to come a long way. I say this to the volunteers as well. I say, listen, every kid that volunteers at Friendship Circle is going to be a more accepting and open adult. And these are our future leaders. So having these kids be exposed when they're teenagers and throughout, from like middle school through high school, and having them get their feet, get their feet wet with working with different kids in the community, this is gonna change our future, because they're gonna be the ones who say, wait, this has to work for all our friends. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, I'm gonna add to what Cece just said, and I'm so glad to hear her say that about the shadowing. It's like a little bit strange for me to say, but I was one of those moms who was sitting at home with my son for Shabbos for a long time, which was particularly upsetting for me because I was the rebbitzin of the shul. But I tried to go to shul with him, and it was just so emotionally draining and difficult for me. And he was just all over the place. I couldn't keep track of him. He couldn't be in shul, he couldn't really do groups, and I didn't have a shadow. And at a certain point, I just said to my husband, I just can't do this. Whatever, I'm just staying home with him. And I did for quite some time. And there wasn't that concept at that point in time of like Shabbos, and believe it or not, we didn't think of it on our own. And then, my husband says it was about 2 years that I didn't show up in shul, but I'm not sure it was quite that long, but maybe it was. And then one day, a very lovely teenage girl from my shul, who I had a nice relationship with till that point, came over to me and she said, Adina, I'm going to start davening at the Hashkalah minyan on Shabbos. And if you show up at shul with Matas at about 10 a.m. when Hashkalah is over, I'll take him at that point. You can go to shul and finish up davening with everybody, and I'll watch him through the Kiddush so that you could talk to people. So I couldn't talk to anybody. Even at Kiddush was a horrible time for me to be, especially as a Rebbitzin. Anybody who knows Rebbitzins, that's the time when we're scanning the room and we're like looking for everybody that we need to be connecting with and what's going on in their lives and whatever. And so, but if I was at that Kiddush and talking to somebody else and actually looking them in the face, that meant that my eyes were not on Matas, and that meant Matas would be out the front door on Francis Lewis Boulevard in Queens, which is a very busy street, and that was just, I just couldn't. So I'll watch him through the Kiddush, you just go, whatever, and this girl did this for me for a number of years, a good number of years. I want to cry when I'm talking about that. It's just, she like gave me like a life. Like it was just one of the biggest chesed that anybody ever did for me. So the whole idea of shadows in shul is just so necessary. It's just, it really should be a given. Certainly if you have a decent sized school where you have groups, if there's groups for everybody else, you should have something, you know, a shadow to take the kids to groups where for whatever reason they're not appropriate to go to groups, just somebody that shadows them and runs around with them and does whatever with them, you know, in school so that the parents can get there, because otherwise you wind up with moms like me who stay at home, and that makes the mothers also feel very excluded and very lonely and very sad. So, you know, that's definitely one. Also, if you're dealing, just to add a little bit more, if you're dealing with older kids who are past group age, it's really nice if you could try to do something to figure out how to make, you know, how to make the kids feel included in shul, how to give them a little chashivas, you know, for those who really can be in shul to a certain degree. There are, my son Matzis, after his bar mitzvah, I'll give you a couple of examples. We thought really long and hard about how to make his bar mitzvah meaningful, what to do, and came up with a lot of things that he was able to do and that he can continue doing after the bar mitzvah. For example, making kiddush on shul on Friday night is not a chiyuv. So even if you don't, you know, understand, you know, he did know how to make kiddush, and he made a beautiful kiddush in shul. It became his job in shul on Friday night to make kiddush for the community. So like that was something amazing. My husband taught him how to do galila, and he did that as his bar mitzvah and continued to get galila and continues to get galila in many shuls because he just knows how to do it at this point. You could give him a job collecting chumashim after Kriyas Torah and bringing the chumashim back to the shelves. You could have them help set up the kid. There's so many ways, so many things you could think of to try to get them involved and make them feel like valued members of the shul community. And I don't think it's that difficult, but if you sit and talk to parents and figure out what their abilities are and where they think they can be included, they're a really good resource. So you don't have to guess. You can sit and talk to them, and they can help you figure out how to make their child feel included in the shul experience. And Cici also pointed out, like when you have special programs in shul also, you need to be thinking about how different kids can participate. I remember I once heard another Rebbetzin, who had a Rebbetzin Yafei Hawaii runs these Rebbetzin Yafei Kalas every year. It's a 2-day conference Rebbetzins, and one Rebbetzin was talking about how her shul was running a carnival. I think, you know, one of those carnivals like with the big bouncy houses and stuff like that, and the carnival games, and she knew that there were a number of children in her shul who had sensory issues and could not participate in this if it was going to be a balgan and like hundreds of people there at the same time and 20 people jumping in the bouncy house at a time. So they opened up the carnival an hour earlier so that the families of those children could come and participate. It's such a simple solution, and it's so nice. It's not, you know, it's not integrating them, it's not like integrating with what everybody else is doing, but it is including them, because if you didn't do that, then they wouldn't be included at all. They couldn't participate in the activity at all. So again, I go back to what I started with, you know, inclusion sometimes looks different, you know, for different people in different situations, but that was a beautiful thought in terms of how to include kids that otherwise couldn't participate in that activity. So that's as far as, you know, that's as far as shuls go. So, you know, there are shuls that are doing a lot, but I think we could always do better. I think there's a lot more that can be done. I think some communities are a lot ahead, but these really should be givens. It shouldn't be like such a big test that we're doing it. Everybody deserves and needs a place in the community. So I think we need to stop looking at it as such a chesed and just as something that just should be. It's a davar pasha. It just is a davar pasha. As far as schools go, I think also, you know, the same thing. Schools, a lot of our schools have come a long way, but there's a lot more that can be done. There's a lot more that can be done. There are some very special programs out there. As in the schools, I think that all schools should have their doors open to children with special needs in some way or another. We all need to be, you know, to be doing this. They should, our children with special needs should be walking in the front doors of the same yeshivas as every other kid. They deserve it. They deserve a Jewish education. It shouldn't be such a far stretch to get that for them. And there are definitely schools that are doing this. Here in New Jersey, you are blessed with the Sinai program. It's an amazing thing. Like the kids are in school with everybody else, and so even if they can't be in mainstream classes and they have their own self-contained classes, but any mainstream opportunity that they can have is there at their fingertips. So if they can daven with the other kids, they can do that. They can participate in minyan. If they can eat the meals with them, breakfast and lunch, then they can do that. If there are special programs going on, then they can be included in that. They're right there. And also, they're roaming the halls with all of their typically developing peers who they probably see on the streets in their communities also. And this just gives them an opportunity to get to meet them and to interact with them, in a normal way. So I think we need to be doing more things like that. There are other schools. My son's yeshiva in the Black Towns has a program also. And it's not a Islamic program, it's actually, my son attends Mesivta Taras Yaakov. The principal, God bless his soul, is Rabbi Mordechai Yafi. He was approached by the Board of Education in the five towns. There's a firm guy who works at the Board of Ed, and he had a classroom of high school kids in one of the public schools, about 7 or 8 boys. They were all dying to be in the yeshiva environment. And he asked Rabbi Yafi if he'd be willing to take them in to the Taras Yaakov. Would he, have these kids, come to school? So Rabbi Yafi proposed also, I think this is something that a lot of schools could probably do. He proposed an idea that they went for and they totally supported. These boys get bused to Mesivta Taras Yaakov in the morning. They daven with all the other students and they eat breakfast with them. They're then picked up by the Board of Ed. They are taken to their school for all of their secular study classes, and then they are bused back 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Mesivta goes till 6:10. So from 3 o'clock until 6:10, they are in the Taras Yaakov building with all the other boys. They have their own Rebbe who learns with them in the afternoon and whatever does all the Tuesday studies with them. They use the gym there. They're in the hallways. My son tells me, the boys are all friendly with them now. We know who they are. We're friends with them. We talk to them in the halls all the time. If there's special programs going on and their Rebbe feels it's appropriate for them, he takes them to those programs. They're there. They're in the same school building. And I have to give a shout out also to my husband. My husband and Dr. Stephen Glucksman started this phenomenal program in YU about 5 years ago. It's 5 years old now. Well, the Maklar College experience. So for older guys who are about college age, if you're high functioning enough that you could navigate the college campus yourself and you're interested in having that college experience, they have a program there for these boys. They are really full-fledged students on the yeshiva campus. They have their own dorm. They live there. They have their own table in the base measures with their own Rebbe. They're in the block base measures. There's a beautiful brand new base measures with everybody else. They have their own table, and that's where they learn with their Rebbe. The Rosh Yeshiva take turns coming and visit and talking to them also, and kind of giving share to them from time to time. They eat the meals in the caf and in all the local restaurants with all the other Bachrim. They participate in whatever special programs go on in the yeshiva. They stay in for Shabbos if they want to with everybody else. And they have access to the gym, they have access to anything on campus that they want to participate in. It's open to them. It's a beautiful, beautiful program. They are no prouder students in YU than the Makor students. It's just a beautiful thing. And again, it takes some effort to put these things together, but there's no reason they shouldn't be there. There's just no reason that they shouldn't be there. So just a few examples. We're doing okay, there are things out there, but I think we can do better. I think we need to see a lot more of it.
Okay, I want to flip the script for a second. You thought I wasn't serious about taking questions and comments, so here's a comment. Our daughter is blind, and she's in her second year at Binghamton. She was with friends, and at the end, one person asked my daughter, "How are you getting home?" She got offended. People shouldn't assume that special needs people can't do things on their own. If the person who wrote this comment is comfortable answering my question, which is, what should someone who wants to help do? But if you're not comfortable, then we set up this thing on purpose.
The way it was asked, not do you need help. That I think it was the way. I think it was the way it was asked, not do you need help or can I help you? So no, how are you getting home? And on one, she doesn't want to be known as the blind student or the blind girl. She wants to be known as Annie. Happens to have a few problems with visual or whatever. She doesn't want, so it's a lot different asking, can I help you? Do you need help? And how are you getting? So it's like, she felt I'm in my second year reading to university. I could manage getting home on my own, but it wasn't even asked me. So she got offended with what she thought, and it, honestly, knowing where it came from, she felt it was more of a nasty type of situation. And it's just, so I thought of it was to ask the question, but it's, I find that it's very important to know how to talk to a person with special needs. So,
I'm glad I asked for the follow-up, so context matters.
I agree with that because so many times we're rushed in our environment, and everyone says rush, and nobody has modifications and kindness.
You know, I just want to interject here that sometimes when sometimes volunteers show up and they've never met this child and we let them work together at a program. And I always take a minute to give them a little bit of background. And I'll tell them, like, you think this child, like, if they're nonverbal or whatever other challenge, I just want you to know that cognitively, this child is almost exactly the same as you. So please talk to him the same way you talk to your friends. Right? Because I think that by default, people are a little patronizing and we think that every child who we see with a disability needs to be spoken to like they're in kindergarten. But I think that the more we tell them and the more we talk to them and the more we explain to them, and like when we used to tell a volunteer, Ilona does high school math, it was like this like eureka moment for them, like, oh my gosh, she's really smart. Like I should talk to her like someone smarter than me, or at the very least the same way I talk to my friends. So I think it's ongoing education. I like to think that people are, sometimes make innocent mistakes or it's unintentional, that for the most part, people have good intentions, but I think it's all part of it, like the ongoing conversation and the ongoing education about how people want to be spoken to and treated, but, yeah.
So, great question here. How should we talk to small kids about others who are differently able?
So that was actually one of the questions that we didn't cover yet.
Yeah, no, this is fresh.
Right, but it's also in the question.
Oh, yeah. I know, well,
So when we talk about, no problem. One of the things I wanted to say about this is, how do we expose little kids? I think it has to be a conversation in the house. I think that in general, they should see that, we're kind, we go out of our way for people, we cook meals for people who are sick or sitting shiva, not only about special needs, but that when kindness is a value in the house, it translates in every way, and that we make accommodations for all kinds of people. I never have Shabbos guests without asking, are there any allergies? That's just an accommodation we all do. I don't know about you, but our shul is not free. All my kids' schools are not free. These are things that are part of their lives. So when someone needs something a little bit different, it shouldn't be so foreign to them. I think it just needs to be something that we talk about. And I think that it's important to help your kids get involved. If they're too young to volunteer on their own, there's things you can do. We had the cutest situation where a mom came with a 5 and 6-year-old, and when they were shopping for her birthday gift, her mom said, let's choose another for a kid who, who's a little different than you. And they delivered it to Friendship Circle, and we had a kid who had a birthday that day, and she came to give it to them. This child was then exposed. It made her think not only about herself. There's so many different pieces of this little incident that develop in the kid's mind. And one of the most valuable things, I think, and we've been talking about this since before COVID, but hopefully really soon it'll be a reality. About 5 years ago, my husband went on a mission to Eretz Yisrael. There was a Friendship Circle mission for Friendship Circle directors and lay leaders. And it was arranged through Access Israel. And Israel does a lot of incredible things for disabilities and special needs. There is a lot of things they do that we really need to learn from. But one of the things that really, really impressed my husband was this program that they have in some of the kindergartens where they have this whole, sensitivity awareness and just general awareness where they bring in adults with different disabilities. When he was there, they were bringing in someone who was blind. And first the kids are prepped by the teachers, then they meet the blind person, then they ask questions, and it's a whole comprehensive lesson that exposes the kids. And every week, for however long the unit is, they work on different disabilities. And I think that it was after much research where they decided that the kindergarten age was really the perfect age, where they're mature enough to process what they're seeing and for it to also make lasting impact. We start with 6th and 7th graders, but imagine if they were already sensitized in kindergarten, how amazing that would be. So now as things slowly return to normal, we're really hoping to get that moving and into every school here. We're going to start with a pilot program, hopefully in September. But how amazing would that be if not just hearing it from home, but also in school, where kids as young as kindergarten were being constantly exposed, and it was explained to them in really normal, acceptable, child-friendly and child-centric terms. I think that could make a huge difference. We have a question.
Sorry, I just have a comment. I mean, you can see that I am in a scooter, and that's fine. But I've actually had little kids come up to me in school, and you know, if this has happened more than once, that a kid has said to me, "Can I ask you a question?" And the mom shushes the kid and says, "Shut! Don't ask that. So insulting." Say, "Ask her a question. Go on right ahead." And most of the time, the question is really thoughtful and really insightful. I mean, one time a kid asked me, Rivka, he said, "Yes." And he said, "You keep Shabbos." And I said, "I do." And he said, "Then how are you using that scooter? Because I see that a light is on." I said, "That is a fantastic question." And I explained in kid terms what a shinoi is, and the fact that I have a degenerative muscle condition. And yes, I explained it all in kid terminology. And I asked him, "Do you understand?" And how many follow-up questions? And he did. And the mom was crying. It was like really weird for me. I was like, "Why are you crying?" And she said, "Because I was so insulted for you that he was asking that question. But you answered him in such a beautiful way." I'm sorry because this is like not this type of forum at all, but I think that if you just, kids are much smarter than we give them credit for a lot of the time, and just say to them straight out, say it like, "Oh, you know what? That's actually a really good question." Like I said to another kid, "You know what? Why don't you come and ask me with the rabbi?" And we went to my rabbi, Rabbi Larry Wafflax, in the congregation of Aaron. And I said to him, like, "Rabbi, I have a question. This kid brought up a really good question to me." He said, "Oh, what was the question?" And it was a really good learning moment for that kid. And so I think that just don't be afraid. And it's not scary because, as we've been saying, people with disabilities, whether they be cognitive, emotional, physical, psychological, developmental, whatever, you're not any different than anybody else. So just treat it like a question.
And two things. I agree and always tell kids that you can ask any question as long as it's respectful. And I am going to be reaching out to you because I want you part of this program in the kindergarten. You should have an amazing way of talking. I'll get your information when we're done.
That's great, that's great. Yeah, no, I just want to add that I think the best way really to teach our children. I'm sorry, I just, I guess similar to what Zee said, really the best way to teach our children how to be inclusive is to model the behavior for them. And, it could be very simple things. You see somebody with unusual to go over and say hi and greet them and, just make them feel about it, just like when you would for anybody else. Go out and, try to talk to them, have a conversation with them. If you have families that have children with disabilities in the, in the community, don't shy away from inviting them for a Shabbos meal to your home. And if you take that opportunity to invite them, you can encourage your children to try to interact, with their child. And if you don't know what that interaction should look like, ask the parents before. What does your child like to do? My son, my daughter would like to, to engage with them. Like, what do you think they would like to do? Would they like to go out and play with swings with them? Would they like to play a game, like a screen game, something like that? Whatever it is. But then your kids will learn, and just ask, ask before if you need to ask. But that's how the kids will learn. If you happen to live in a neighborhood that has a group home, invite those. Get on the list. Invite those guys for a meal, for a Shabbos, or for Yom Tov. They love things like that. They love it. Purim is coming up, deliver shalach for them if they're there, I think that's just the only way to teach, or the best way to teach our kids is to try as much as we can, if we know how, as adults, to model the behavior.
I'll just, when we're talking about embracing all differences, that's the topic of here, a more expansive way of looking at people. I think there's a language shift also. A couple of years ago, I read something, I learned something. It was from a sikha from Rabbi Mital, blessed memory, from the Rosh. And shift away from the language of chesed, which often implies a top-down kind of, I have sympathy for you, I feel bad. I'm okay, I'm good, and you don't. So I'm going to kind of come down out of my happy, stable, good, solid place, and I'm going to be with you and help you. I'm going to give you a hand up. And there's a certain, such as old chesed boneh, there's a certain, there's almost like a hazard or a price tag that can come along that can be certain presumptuous arrogance almost of like, I'm going to help you, and that often creates a disconnect in others, the individual to whom you wish to connect. Shifting from chesed to arevus, which is a halachic term that means that there's a shared mutual obligation and responsibility, one for the other. There's a mutual kind of pact that we're all in this together. The term is empathy as opposed to sympathy. It's a more lateral, eye to eye, that, in this situation right now, we're doing this together, then builds a little bit of a sense of respect. It doesn't turn individual with fill in the blanks here as something which is different, someone who is or which is different than me. And it's not just talking about, I think we ought to expand this. We're talking specifically about creating an inclusive community. I mean, it's not, to talk about it here is easy in fair wellness, in the shul, in this room, in this space. Individuals have a different level of religious observance. Individuals who are in a different socioeconomic state. Individuals who are a different race or even religion. Othering them and kind of coming off our high horse, so to speak, to extend the hand and help them up, to be able to be part of our privilege under the guise of chesed, which seems to be something which is very noble, can often be very presumptuous, very arrogant. But if we create an attitude of society, even in our own homes, just changing the language, instead of when someone knocks on the door, in our neighborhood, 25, 30 times a week, literally, people are knocking on our doors. And it's not because of such, it's not because we're the Rothschilds on the block, you know what I'm saying? No, Michelle, the Rothschilds actually is Rothschild on my block. He does what the guy's good. He's in the market. He sold whatever e-cigarettes. He got in at the right time. Go to him. But there's a certain mentality that like we've adopted. I was like, we don't say that there's a collector at the door. There's a smuggler at the door. There's a beggar at the door. There's an ani at the door. There's an orech. There's an orech. There's a chaver. There's a friend. Just changing that language and offering a drink and offering a restaurant, and including them in our home. It creates, I think that trickles down into the way a child, the way that we would look at someone who's different than us. The Yochanan ben Zakkai tells us to greet every person in the marketplace. And greet the Gentile in the marketplace. I mean, he was inclusive in greeting people and showing people respect, extending himself and extending love. It's important. The evening is in memory of Ilona, and it's also specifically to direct our attention and focus on individuals with autism, or individuals with specialized needs, or individuals. But if we're expansive about the way we see people as people, human beings as human beings, so that language of empowerment, that language of empathy, of arevus, of mutual responsibility, ultimately will have a positive effect on the specific on the detail or the specific demographic that we're addressing. It really ought to be more global. I don't know if I answered the question, but I wanted to say that. Oh, good. Yeah, she called my TED Talk.
Well, we'll cut that as a clip and send it out. As a last question, are there resources, organizations, things that people in the room should know about, either as family members of someone with special needs, or I'm kicking myself asking this question, because everyone is definitely able, but or as people who are now motivated and concerned and interested in being better community members.
So this actually, this started recently, but in October, Yachad, I don't know how many people know about this yet, so that's what I'm going to talk about for a second, but Yachad launched a resource and referral center for parents of individuals with special needs, so that they have a hotline number. It's 1-877-REACH-52. And you can call a parent who, who has a child with special needs, can call and get referrals for different schools, for doctors, for therapists, for social programming, for all different kinds of things. They have a huge database. It's mostly so far set up for New York and New York services, but they are starting out on New Jersey also, and they're always adding to their database. And I think that's probably going to be a great resource for people to have. I don't think anything like that exists yet for for the world of special needs. If you need a doctor, people call ECHO. If you need somebody for psychiatric issue, call Relief. So this is, you have a child with special needs, you can call this resource and referral center, REACH at Yachad, and hopefully get a lot of good guidance. And they're constantly building up their database, and so I spoke to Deborah Rockoff, as the person who runs the hotline. It's her thing, and she was explaining to me that people call and there are services that they don't really have information on yet, or that they're not sure exist. They work on that. First of all, look on research, and then also try to see if they could perhaps get things going on that front. And things are missing. They're noticing gaps as people call. So fill things in.
Judah, do you see underappreciated organizations or resources?
So it's part of Friendship Circle, but I do want to say that what I find is so valuable for the families is when the moms, no offense to the dads, but when the moms meet each other, no matter what kind of event we're having, they do not stop networking, and that's exactly what it's all about. I started a program called Moms Night Out, and we meet a couple times a year. We always do something fun. It's not a formal support group. But I once met, within a couple months of each other, I met two moms on the same block in Teaneck who had children with similar diagnoses, and they had no idea the other one existed. And I said, this is crazy. Everybody is reinventing the wheel. We have to get the moms together. They are each other's most valuable resource. So I feel like for them to meet, and occasionally we'll introduce, a mom will ask me, and I'll find a family who's like a little bit ahead of them in the journey, because it's great to meet professionals and all that, but there's something about sharing with another mom, and a lot of the families have really become friends, and they've become a support for each other. And everyone knows something else. They know a diet, they know a vitamin, they know a doctor, they know a therapist, they know a lawyer. So all these different pieces, I feel like for the parents to share with each other is so valuable. So if you know a family who's at the beginning of this journey, I would highly encourage you to encourage them to either reach out to a friendship circle wherever they are, or another organization, and see if they can get introduced to a family who's already gone through something similar or is going through it at the same time. Because you know what, like when we share the burden, it already becomes so much more manageable.
Or if you happen to already know, perhaps you as a friend know somebody else who's been through a similar journey. You could try to connect them yourself also, which is, there's no better support than somebody else who's been through something similar to what you've been through and can go through with you and share the knowledge that they've gained over the years. No better support.
I was with a group of people today in Lakewood, New Jersey, and the last 2 days, Lakewood, Tom's River, Jackson, new territory for me personally. And we were meeting with different groups and different people, and it was the most wonderful and encouraging experience today. I'm in office building, nursing home, shocking, nursing home facility, and no one there had a family member or had any particular skin in the game, so to speak. With programs, they probably never heard of Yachad, some of them heard of us, like that, a little bit of its own. And what was extraordinary was how warm and responsive and receptive, and positive, and encouraging, and interested everyone was. When I spoke for 2 minutes by this mincha. It said, Lech Knos Kol Yehudim. This is what we have to call that goes out on Purim. There's gather the Jews together, get everyone together. And what was amazing was how many people afterwards were asking questions and talking. And realizing every single one of us can be an advocate. Every single one of us can be a resource. You don't necessarily have to know all the answers. You have to have an open heart and be interested in helping. And be interested in putting our shoulder beneath the burden. None of this, chevra, I was there, in Kemach, in anything. I was looking there to float the boat, to raise a little bit of money. And what was more meaningful was even more than raising awareness was the opportunity for people to say, like, this matters to me, I care about it. And it was extraordinary. So I feel like we can activate it ourselves. We can become resources too. We don't necessarily have to know the answers. We don't necessarily have to, be the ones who are the experts, but to be able to be the ones to care, just to be a listening ear. That's also a resource. You have to be an organization. There are organizations, and whenever there'll be a new need, there'll be a new organization that comes to fill that need. And Friendship Circle, and OHEL, and Makor, and HASK, and all the different wonderful organizations in the world will never be able to cover all the bases. But Lech Knos Kol HaYehudim, like Yaakov Avinu turns to his children, and he says, "Hey, Osfu, gather together, Ikabtzu." This is two different ways. Get together, and then individually, each of you, bring your skill set, bring your interests, bring your abilities, bring your knowledge, bring yourselves, because we have to get this together. All Israel means when every single person is engaged and is activated as a resource. It might not know that there's how to help a family with a child with autism find a dentist who knows how to handle that child. You might not necessarily be able to help somebody with estate planning and figure out custody issues for after 120. You might not necessarily know that answer. Somebody has that answer, and hopefully they'll find that organization. More importantly, we are the untapped resources in our community, our families, our homes, our shuls, our schools. We are the ones who can make those differences and those changes. We're those resources that haven't yet been discovered and been tapped. An evening like this goes a long way to remind us of that responsibility, and remind us of that opportunity, and also to remind us of that privilege that's supposed to play a role in somebody's life, to be somebody's somebody, so to speak. And say thank you for the opportunity to have this.
On behalf of the audience, I'd love to thank the panelists for your time and for your insightful words and for being here with us. Before Larry goes to the next one, I also want to thank the classmates. Larry and Andy,
I wasn't supposed to speak, so I don't know what I'm going to say, but Michelle, Adina, Zizi, and our old friend David Pardo, thank you very much. You've made this evening something that Nancy and I, and Amy and Andrew and Scott, who is watching from Amherst, will remember for a long time. I'd also like to apologize to all of you on live stream that we got it. The part that you didn't see the beginning of this, but there were people who were recording it, and we're going to take it. I'm going to take it and get it all on YouTube within the next couple of days. So if you want to see what you missed and it was good, it was Nancy's speech. Please give me a chance, and hopefully by the end of the week it will be posted so everyone can see. Okay? Thank you, Nancy. For taking the idea and driving it through and presenting and putting everything together for such a wonderful program. Okay? Does anybody else have to thank? Okay. Thank you, Rabbi Markowitz and Sarah. Thank you, Rabbi Udi and Chetty, for your inspiration and support. And this is the tough part. Because we couldn't have gone 28 years with Ilona without the support of you and everyone in this room and all our friends within the Show Me Torah community. Thank you. Yesterday was Ilona's birthday, so let's all wish her happy birthday. Have a good night.
Last thing, before everyone leaves, the planning committee wanted to make sure that this wasn't just a panel. So actually, we built into these 3x5 cards, really handy dandy, you can flip them over as a different function. Challenge everyone in the room to think of one thing that they're going to take away, that they're going to think about, they're going to do differently, that they learned tonight as a consequence of being here tonight, would be the greatest way to honor Ilona's memory. Thank you, everybody.